and welcome to Dustin's Kaleidoscope. I am Dustin, and I am here today with Keisha Miller, who is the South Orange Public Library Volunteer Coordinator and Teen Librarian.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So, as you know, I have wanted you to come on the show for quite a while, so it's such a pleasure to have you here. But one of the reasons, we'll talk about it later, but you have been awarded a very prestigious award, which we can talk about a little later. But I wanted to get an idea about your background. Like, why did you become a librarian? What is the process that you went through to even go into this industry?
Well, I became a librarian sort of by accident. It wasn't a profession I ever considered.
Really?
It was actually largely in part to a director who I worked with for a number of years, and she saw that I just finished my undergrad studies, and she said to me, "What are you going to do now?" And I was all like, "Oh, I'm going to go into social work. I want to use my criminal justice background. Who knows, maybe I'll apply to law school." And she's like, "That sounds wonderful, but you should really think about going into library science." And I looked at her like, what is that? I just didn't know that there was a degree for library science, that you had to be a degreed librarian. It just never occurred to me.
And you were working at a library at this time?
Yes, I was working at South Orange at the time. And so I said, all right, I'll think about it. And I kind of didn't. I can say that now. But she would come back and she'd say, "Did you give it some thought?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, tell me a little bit more, because I'm not really sure." I grew up with very little knowledge of what librarians did, not knowing that you had to have a degree to be a librarian. I myself didn't go to the library often as a child. For those of you who are watching, you might remember the World Book Encyclopedias.
Oh, yes.
They got me through. That was my library. So I didn't go to the library as a child. So I didn't have that experience. I didn't have a librarian who I loved or admired. So over time, my director would just kind of slip notes in my mailbox.
Oh, really?
And there would be notes of, little did you know facts about being a librarian. And I'm like, okay, all right, I get it. And so in addition to looking at schools, graduate programs for social work, and even some law programs, I said, let me just look at some library science programs. And so Rutgers University is our state university. And I looked at their program and I considered it, but I really like the idea of smaller classes and hands-on experience, and I'm sure the program has changed quite a bit since I was looking at it. So I opted not to go to Rutgers, but I went to Pratt Institute in New York, and which is the oldest library school in the country.
Really? Okay. Fun fact.
And I pursued my master's in information and library science there, and finished in about 2.5 years, and I became a librarian.
Wow.
And it was while I was in school that I learned a lot about the profession, and I really explored different ways. Do I want to be a public librarian? Do I want to be a school librarian? Do I want to be an academic librarian?
And I think people don't know that there are differences among those. You don't have to go through each one, but can you sort of touch on what are the main differences between?
Oh, sure.
Among those?
Sure. So I am someone who works in a public library, so I would think, just because of my own personal preference, I would always be a librarian in a public library setting.
Okay.
I did, however, think about going to become a school librarian, and that's a different track. You have to take about 3 or 4 more classes in addition to your coursework, which is about 36 credits.
Okay.
So you have to get a certification to become a school librarian or a school media specialist. And I considered it, and I said, summer's off, work with kids, I love kids.
Right.
But I decided at the time that the best opportunity for me was to pursue the public librarian track.
Okay.
And that's what I did. And I built a network with a lot of public librarians. Over time, I got to know some academic librarians, those who work in colleges and universities, not to be confused with school librarians who work with elementary, middle, and high school students.
Okay.
And I also got to know some law librarians here and there, but not too many, because each network is very, very different. Certainly with the public, working for the state of New Jersey, you have a much wider connection. The more you go into a different concentration, the smaller I think the network is.
Oh, I see.
And that's just my personal opinion, which isn't quite true for New Jersey, at least, with their colleges and university section. It's really, really big. But having these smaller focuses, if you may, allows you to connect with librarians across the state and in different concentrations to have programs, share different ideas. So as a public librarian and someone who is a teen librarian, I really value the relationship I have with college and university librarians because of teens who are rising college students, that it makes it an interesting dynamic, an interesting way to work with college and university librarians or academic librarians.
And so when you work with them, are you using them as a resource so that you can help the rising college and university high school students get an idea of what to expect? Like how is that relationship?
Yes. So it's actually a very good one because the college and university librarians haven't thought about public librarians at all.
Oh, really?
We have 17 and 18-year-olds who are
right.
still in high school.
Right.
We have to provide them with resources and help them prepare for college. So why not, be a part of that transition? You send kids off to college and that's it. And then the college decides, okay, let's do freshman orientation, which might include, a library orientation as well. The same way that you include a library orientation for, say, middle school or high school. The same has to be done for colleges and universities. And so we try to work together, and not on a consistent basis, but we might collaborate, I should say, on, maybe 2 programs and share resources and share ideas. And that has been very, very helpful.
Okay. So a question I had about the public librarians is when you go into a library, most people think that everyone they see working is a librarian. Is that true, or are there different,
It's true that people will come into a library and see and think that everybody who works there is a librarian. It is not.
Okay.
You have to have a master's degree.
Okay.
A master's in information and library science, or some schools like Rutgers, it's just a master's of information. There's some combination of the information science part of it that you have to have. And so to become a professional librarian, you have to have a master's. And then by the state of New Jersey, you get a library certificate from Thomas Edison University that certifies you as a librarian with the state.
And is this something that you have to be recertified every few years, or once you have it?
Once you have it, you have it.
So when I come into the library, what's the benefit of having a librarian versus like some of the other people who are not librarians?
So the people who are not librarians, we would refer to as library clerks or paraprofessionals, kind of across the profession. They have a lot of knowledge, but it's the research component that comes with, being a librarian. How you research things, you might know a little bit more, you might dig a little bit deeper in terms of what you're looking for. But our paraprofessionals, our support staff, they're instrumental in what we do as librarians. So luckily for South Orange, we have a great staff, and we help each other out. And so we provide each other that nice balance.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is when you're the teen librarian as well, is that something that was also like part of the discipline in you getting your getting your master's, or is that something that you brought to the table?
No, that's a part of my discipline.
Oh, okay.
So my discipline or concentration is in children and teen services,
Okay.
or children and teen literacy. And so under either of those umbrellas would be programming, would be collection development. But generally speaking, I have to have knowledge of material selection policies, like how we decide to purchase materials, and it goes against our material selection policy. I have to have an understanding of the community that I'm working with to know what they want. So I'm a teen librarian. The teens in South Orange and our neighboring Maplewood may not be reading the same thing as teens in another town, or vice versa. So it's important to me that I reach out to the teens and I say, hey, you know, what are some things that you like to do? Give me X, Y, and Z ideas. Or if they come to me and say, oh, Miss Miller, you know, I really wanted this book. Or I really wanted, can we get such and so? I'm like, okay, so you're telling me this is what you want. I can't get it tomorrow. Right. But it's good that they're giving me that feedback. So I have to have understanding of the community. We oftentimes do a community needs assessment. We could do we could do a lot of different things, but understanding just generally what libraries are, how they were established. But yes, being a teen librarian, my concentration was on teen literacy, or children and teen literacy.
Okay, that's very interesting, because I didn't realize that there was that discipline. I thought it was something that was library to library, basically.
Yeah, so I took all of your core classes, but then I decided, well, what am I going to do? You know, there are people who went to the same program that I did, but decided to perhaps become a reference librarian. And it's not that they took all these classes to become a reference librarian, it's just what they're interested in. But when it comes down to children and teen services, you really get kind of into the nitty-gritty of that.
Really?
I had an amazing professor. Oh my gosh. So I'm dating myself here, but it was the VMAs. I think it was like 2009, 2010. And that was our first assignment. I walk into class. I'm like, okay, I'm in grad school. He's like, your assignment is watch the VMAs happening in a couple days. I'm like, what? And you learn about pop culture, you know, social awareness and all of that. And I was like, okay, but that's a part of getting to know your community, getting to know your teens, building the collection, building programs. And then I had a cataloging class that I just wanted to cry every time I stepped into the class. I was like, give me my tween media literacy class. I hate cataloging. But cataloging, knowing, understanding how to catalog a book. Anybody else who might look at the book, they flip through, they're like, wait, prologue, chapter 1. I'm looking at the title page to know how to catalog the book.
Interesting.
That goes against the Library of Congress. I might be looking where to place this book, or how to catalog it according to the Dewey Decimal on the title page. I know it's a bestseller. I got that. But I need to know how to catalog it.
And these are all the things that you're learning. So
Yes.
with that, we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about, we're going to start talking about your award.
Oh, okay.
But I also wanted to ask you a little bit more about the library services. So I'm Dustin Dumas, and you are watching Dustin's Kaleidoscope, and we will be right back.
It's an onion.
Hi, I'm Dustin Dumas, and you are watching Dustin's Kaleidoscope, and I am joined with Keisha Miller of the South Orange Public Library, and we are going to continue talking about the library, but I want to switch gears a little bit. You know, this comes up all the time about books that are banned. Can you give us an idea? I don't need you to go into specifics, but can you go into like generally what the library does in the the case that a parent or a patron comes in and does not want a book on the shelf, or just has in general ideas that they want to tell the library that in the future, do not buy these books. So what
well, first, thanks for asking that question. So it starts with ALA, the American Library Association.
Okay.
And there's the Bill of Rights, the ALA Bill of Rights. And so when you look at that, you use it as a model. But each library has a reconsideration policy. And so if you come into the library and say, question why, you challenge a book in terms of questioning why a book is on the shelf, or you're disagreeing with the fact that it's in the collection, we can have that conversation. There's a process that's followed.
And who would they contact? Like, do they just come in and talk to?
So if I'm at the reference desk, I would get the director involved.
Got it. Okay.
And we would take it from there. But the advantage to that is that we're a public library. Not to say that there aren't books that are challenged in public libraries. There are. But when you talk about, working in a community like South Orange and our neighboring town, Maplewood, we're a very progressive community. And so we're open to diverse thought. And I'm grateful for that. So we haven't had many people coming in to challenge material.
Okay.
But again, it's not to say it doesn't happen. Where you will see it, and I'm not speaking for the school district, but in school libraries, just generally speaking, you see that happen frequently. And that's what's been happening in the last few months. People challenging books for LGBTQ issues, people challenging books for written by Black authors. And you're challenging these books based on, a curse word or an intimate scene. But there's a story that's built around these things that you're...
It's like all in context.
It's all in context, right. So you'll see it more in school libraries than you will in public libraries. At least that has been my experience.
I can definitely remember as a child being in a fourth, fifth, elementary school, and the librarian, these were books that are they're just black and white pictures. They're not photos or anything. And if there was any type of nudity, like meaning even if it was like Greek nudity, her job was to take a black marker and just,
Wow.
any genitalia, like,
wow.
So needless to say, we did not have anything like National Geographic or anything like that available to us. So anyway, that's interesting to see how it's different between the public libraries and the school libraries.
Correct. So. There's a distinction between the two.
Okay. So now I really want to talk to you about your award. So I'm going to start with this one first. So you received a proclamation from the South Orange Village, and can you tell us why you received it? And
Well, I received the proclamation from the Village of South Orange because in the year 2021, I was recognized as New Jersey Librarian of the Year.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you're still technically the New Jersey Librarian of the Year for an entire year.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So for an entire year, and it has been a wonderful way to be recognized for within my profession. And the Village of South Orange very wonderfully gave me a proclamation recognizing my work as a librarian and in the town. And I don't think there's been a librarian from South Orange recognized ever. The award is about, don't hurt me, NJLA. I think the award is about 22, 23 years old.
Wow.
Could be more than that. And never has a South Orange librarian been selected.
That's congratulations.
Thank you.
And I have to say, having personally knowing you for many years now, that this is very well deserved. I mean, you touch the community in so many different ways, outside of the library as well as in. How how many librarians are in this pool of librarians that they're considering?
0. It's a whole nomination process.
Oh, okay.
You can self-nominate,
Right.
but your peers will
Interesting.
nominate you.
Okay.
So it's not that anybody is in a pool and this one has won the nomination. I actually I didn't understand the process until I was selected. I said, well, who wrote a nomination? Like, nobody spoke to me.
Like, you had no idea?
No idea.
You're kidding. It was a total surprise?
No idea. I literally, talk about being at the reference desk. I picked up the phone. Good afternoon. Reference, how can I help you? And the person on the other end said, identified themselves, and they said, Keisha? And I said, yeah. It's like, oh, hey, how you doing? Long story short, I thought when he called me at the moment, he was congratulating me on something else. And I was like, oh, thanks so much. And he's just like, no, you are this year's Librarian of the Year.
Wow.
And I turned to my colleague, Michael Pucci, and he looks at me. I'm like, you knew, didn't you?
Did he know? Or did he suspect?
Say.
Okay.
I played the fifth. No, but I'm like, you knew. And he's like, So it's a whole nomination process by the New Jersey Library Association's Honors and Awards Committee.
Okay.
And they'll reach out to the people who were, in this case, my peers across the state. They reached out to my fellow teen librarian in Maplewood, Emily Witkowski, as well as people I've been able to work with within the association, New Jersey Library Association, to support this nomination. And they wrote a beautiful nomination. I mean, a beautiful nomination. I was moved to tears. And actually, what they shared in the nomination, I didn't even remember that I had done half of these things and accomplished, the many things over the course of my career. So it was really a beautiful, beautiful surprise. And I had to keep it under lock and key.
You couldn't tell anybody?
I couldn't tell anybody. It was about a month, maybe even like 6 weeks before the annual conference. And that's where it's announced, at the annual conference, which is usually held in June of each year. Okay. And so, I learned of this about end of April, maybe. Okay. And he's like, well, you can't say anything. I was like, okay. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is... And, it just went over my head. I hung up the phone, and I kept doing what I was doing at the reference desk. It was like a regular Wednesday for me. But then I get the award, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, oh, that's nice, not bad. And I put it down. And then the Village of South Orange gave me this proclamation, and so many people from the community just came in to congratulate me and sent me wonderful messages, and the library board sent a beautiful bouquet of flowers, and the library staff had a whole luncheon for me, and it was just really, really nice, and just kind of reminds me of why I entered this profession and why I do what I do, and it's just a nice thing, and I really enjoy being a librarian.
It shows how you've touched so many different people in the community. Really. I mean, for people to come in and congratulate you and to let you know that they appreciate what you've done, that's great. But I have a question for you. So once you were able to tell people, who's the first person you told?
I told my mother. And, I'll be honest, I wasn't supposed to tell her when I did. And we had a long car ride, and it was kind of quiet. And I was just like, oh, guess what? This is happening. And she's like, what? Really? I was like, yeah. So, the one unfortunate event that came along with it is that, due to the pandemic, everything was virtual. Last year we also had a virtual conference, so you really couldn't get like the magnitude and the excitement in the room. But I didn't need that. I just felt everybody just sending me messages and congratulating me, and that was just wonderful. So.
And I think it is wonderful. Like I said before, I think you deserve this.
Thank you.
I've known you for many years now, and I've seen you not only help the teens, but I've seen you just help patrons and have been so kind and helpful. So, and it doesn't matter. Like not all libraries are like that, where there is helpful. So, it's very special.
Thank you. Thank you. Because I'm a teen librarian and I work with the people who are in between,
right?
If you may. I think it's really important to pay attention to our younger patrons,
right.
Those kids who are not yet teens, and then pay attention also to our older patrons who have been teenagers. Right. Teens are the people who teach you and I. Children teach adults.
Yes.
Point blank, period.
Yeah.
So it's important to me to have patience with people, to help them, to guide them, teens and adults, and kids as well. Teens teach me something every day. Every day they teach me something.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do.
And I love it. I really enjoy being a librarian.
So what do you now that you are the New Jersey Librarian of the Year, you are a librarian, obviously. What is like the career path that people would take beyond this, or is this it? Is this the final?
I'm just gonna quit my job and get a yacht, go sail off someplace. No, there's no difference in pay. It's a beautiful way to recognize your excellence in what you do. But if I chose to pursue other areas of librarianship, specifically to public libraries, perhaps, administration or becoming a director, it's a nice little, hey.
Right.
But there's nothing that comes, with it to say, I'm going to be promoted to something else, another, what's the word I'm looking for? Promoted to a different position or anything like that. No. Okay. I will say, and I want to say I'm almost 100% sure that I'm the first Black librarian to receive this award.
In 23 or 22 years.
Yeah.
Wow, that's...
So...
You're breaking all kinds of records. The first South Orange librarian, the first Black librarian. So
that to me is important, and the work with NJLA, again, the New Jersey Library Association, it has been instrumental into how it has shaped my career. So working at South Orange Library, absolutely, but working with the two, they have been instrumental. Both have been instrumental in my career and allowing me to do a lot of different things. And I'm founder and president of the Library Workers of Color section. Wow. So that's really amazing too.
I'm gonna have to have you on again because we have not even touched like everything that you've done and continue to do. But for right now, we're out of time. But I'm so glad you came on. Thank you so much.
Dustin. Thank you.
And this is Dustin's Kaleidoscope, and we will see you next time. Bye.